Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting on these 3 wooden light boxes that I found at the dollar store. Now the material of the wood is very thin and very delicate, but I still think it would be perfect for customizing and painting on. I started by just removing any stickers that are on the back of this box. When I was at the store and I found them, I saw that they had a big box full of them, but they only had these 3 different styles, and so I chose to get one of each. Now I will say in advance that this video is very different from what I normally do. This video is going to be more crafty than artsy. And the main reason for that is because I'm working on a big project that should hopefully be ready by next week. And so I needed a really quick and easy video for this week. But I started off by cutting off the cords on top of each of the boxes just because they weren't going to match with the colors that I had chosen. And so now I'm preparing the 3 colors that I decided to paint on each of the boxes. I decided that I really wanted to do a pastel blue, a pastel purple, and a pastel pink for the 3 boxes. And I had originally started painting this first one blue, but then I had realized it was probably a safer idea to give it all a coat of gesso first. So I went in and started painting the other ones with gesso while I waited for the blue to dry. I only did give 1 coat of gesso to all of them, just because I didn't think it was that necessary to give it more than 1. The 1 coat was really enough to create a good base coat for all of the colors. And I also decided very early on that I wasn't going to paint the bottom of the boxes, just because that would have taken a lot more time to paint, since I would have to wait for the top part to dry, and because it wouldn't really be able to be seen when it was on display. And so once all 3 have been gessoed, I started painting this first one with a blue color all the way around it. The 3 colors that I chose for these light boxes are all just going to be a solid color, just to create a nice foundation for it. I really like this purple color. It's almost like a lilac color. And for this last light box, it has somewhat of a flowery design, and some of the little holes would get filled with paint and gesso, so I did have to poke them out a couple of times while painting the whole thing. And so I did give it a whole 2nd coat as well. And I believe they actually took 3 coats of acrylic paint to get a full color. While I was painting this, I didn't have a clear idea of how I wanted to decorate them, so I wanted to make sure that I had a good solid color for all of it, since I wasn't sure how much of the paint was actually going to be seen in the end. But looking at it now after finishing it, I think I could have been fine with just the 2 coats, since most of the paint was covered anyway in the end. And so once I finished giving all 3 of them a solid color, I decided to just start working on them one on one. And so I started with the blue, and the design for blue is actually going to be a lot simpler than the other ones, since I wanted to start off with a more simple design for the first one. I picked out these blue flowers that I thought would look nice on the top of the light box, and I just used regular old hot glue to glue them in place. And I tried my best to organize them in a way that wouldn't leave weird gaps where you could see the glue. And I just pulled out a bunch of shiny things that I had in my collection that matched the color scheme of blue. And so I pulled out these strings of gems that I have in a blue color, and then some blue hearts that I had to glue onto the light box. And all of these little decorations that I found, all of these came from the dollar store, so this whole video was made almost completely from the dollar store. And just glue them all over the light box, which you can't really see because of the flowers. But later on, you'll get a closer look at how each of the light boxes turned out. And so then I moved on to the purple one, where I also got out these purple flowers and the purple hearts that I had. But this time the string of gems weren't purple, they're actually a silver color. And so I struggled a lot with the placement of the flowers. I wanted it to look full, but also not overly full, which didn't really end up working out. All of them really ended up very full. And this was a very tedious process of gluing things. I'm not a big fan of hot glue just because of the mess and the problems that it has. And it does dry very quickly, but it's also very messy with all the strings. And I burned myself many times throughout this whole process. While I used almost the exact same materials, the design of each of the boxes were very different. They had some similarities, but I wanted to make sure that each of them could look nice on their own, but also had some similarities that they could look nice together as a set. I will say, if you are planning to do something like this on any other project, I would recommend getting some tweezers or just something that you can use to push down the gems or the pieces or the sequins. Just because doing it with your hands will cause you to burn yourself a lot. I didn't learn this until later on, where I got out my pliers and tweezers to work with this. And so now finally I'm moving on to the last one, the pink one, which ends up being my favorite. I struggled a lot with the placement of the flowers and the gems, but for this one I ended up going with the gold cord of gems, which at first I wasn't sure about because I didn't really think it matched with the pink very well. But I didn't really have any other colors, and I didn't want to repeat any of the colors that I had already used, so I ended up just settling for the gold for the pink. And as you can see with this rose, I had to almost completely just arm it and make it piece by piece and glue it on piece by piece, just so it would glue on correctly. And so once I glued on this first pink rose, it left a really big gap in the middle, and so I tried working a way to find a way to fill it, but in the end I just ended up getting a whole other rose and sticking it in the center. And there was still a little gap in it, so I just filled it in with some little jewelry beads that I had. And I glued the little pink flowers all the way in the little gaps and two in the front, just to fill up any gaps that were going to be showing in the piece. I really wanted to avoid having the glue show up at all. And since these are light boxes, I will be showing you all how they look in the dark and when they're lit up at the end, once they're all done and ready. And so at this point I had finished with all of them, and I was debating whether I should put a sealant on top of it, but in the end I decided it would be best if I did. Even though the acrylic paint is pretty sturdy and it's just a base color, I didn't think they would get scratched up, but I did think that the protectant and sealant would help, especially with the little gems and sequins. I thought it would help keep it all in together. And so I decided to use a matte Mod Podge over all of the light box. I didn't cover any of the flowers, just the actual box, just to ensure that everything would stay in place and would survive over the long term. And so once that was done, this is how all the light boxes turned out. The first one is this blue one, which I like. It's just a little simpler than the other ones. It doesn't have as much detail as the other two, but since it was my first one, I think it was a good starting off point. And I did put my initials and put the date at the bottom of all three of these. This purple one I really enjoyed, especially the front side with the border of the gems all the way around it. And then finally, the third one, the pink one, which is actually my favorite out of all of them. I just really like how all the flowers came together and just how all the colors look together. And so now I will be showing you all how each of these light boxes look in different lighting. First, in complete darkness, this is how the lights look. You can't really see any of the decorations, but it does light up pretty well. Overall, this whole process of customizing these light boxes was a lot of fun. There wasn't as much painting as I'm used to, but I really enjoyed getting to use lots of different materials to decorate these boxes. As I was saying earlier, these are the light boxes in different lighting, so you can kind of get a feel for how they look. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please let me know which of the three is your favorite. And God bless you.